minimize the pain for Canadians, maximize the pain for Americans.
April 2nd was supposed to be a big victory for Donald Trump. He called it Liberation Day, the moment when his administration's strongest tariffs yet would force foreign economies to bow to American power. But instead of making the U.S. stronger, Trump may have just handed China the biggest opportunity in modern history. As America pulls away from global trade, its allies, especially Canada, are turning to China, creating a partnership that could change everything. China is offering to save Canada's economy along with Mexico and Europe. They are all moving towards China and away from the U.S. So is it possible that China is becoming the new economic superpower? The world stage is heating up, and in this video, we are bringing you the hottest updates. But first, ensure you subscribe to the channel because we give the best geopolitical analysis. Trump introduced massive new tariffs, 25% on imported vehicles, 50% on Canadian steel and aluminum, and even higher penalties on Chinese goods. His administration claimed these moves would bring jobs back to the U.S. and make American industries stronger. But that's not what happened. Instead of backing down, China and Canada fought back and struck a deal with each other. While the U.S. tried to play hardball, its closest allies started looking elsewhere. And now, a powerful new trade partnership is rising, without America. Canada and the U.S. have long been economic soulmates. Around $2.5 billion in goods and services cross their border daily. For decades, they've relied on each other for oil, cars, metals, food, and more. In fact, 75% of all Canadian exports go straight to the U.S. Everything from energy to auto parts. Canada sends nearly 3.8 million barrels of oil to the U.S. every day. That oil is crucial for American refineries and energy production. The auto industry is another major connection, with Canada exporting about $65 billion worth of cars and parts to the U.S. annually. Disrupt that trade, and you're not just hurting Canada. You're freezing factories, killing jobs, and triggering chaos on both sides of the border. But here's what many Americans don't realize. The U.S. needs Canada just as much. More than 60% of America's crude oil imports come from Canada, making it the biggest source of foreign energy for the U.S. It also supplies 10% of U.S. electricity, especially in states like New York and Michigan. Cut off that flow, and gas prices spike, power grids weaken, and families pay the price. And it's not just energy. U.S. car makers rely on Canadian-made parts, and grocery stores are stocked with Canadian wheat, seafood, dairy, and fresh produce. A trade breakdown means rising car prices, empty shelves, and inflation that hits every household. Let's not forget aluminum and steel. Canada is the top supplier of both. These aren't just building blocks for cars and homes. They're critical for planes and military equipment too. So when the U.S. slaps tariffs on its closest trade partner, it's not just flexing muscle. It's risking a collapse in industries that keep the economy running. And this couldn't come at a worse time. The world is realigning. New alliances are forming fast. If Washington continues to push allies like Canada away, others, like China, will gladly fill the gap. If that happens, America's influence will shrink, and it will be much harder to rebuild the trust and economic strength that has been the foundation of North America for so long. Some argue that tariffs are a necessary tool to protect American industries from unfair foreign competition and to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. Supporters believe these measures can reduce reliance on global supply chains and strengthen national security. However, critics warn that such aggressive tactics often backfire, triggering retaliation and economic isolation. As we've seen, the current wave of tariffs may be doing more harm than good. But Trump's repeated attacks, tariffs, tough negotiations, and threats have pushed Canada to look elsewhere. And China was more than ready to step in. In a shocking move, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced a massive trade deal with China. Canada will now send most of its oil, minerals, and farm goods to China, while China will invest heavily in Canadian industries. This means Canada is moving away from the U.S. and toward a new, more powerful partner. In March 2025, Rongsheng Petrochemical, China's largest independent refiner with a processing capacity of 800,000 barrels per day, established an office in Calgary, Alberta. This strategic move aims to facilitate the procurement of Canadian crude oil, diversifying China's energy imports and reducing reliance on traditional suppliers. Rongsheng's inaugural purchase involved a shipment from Canadian producer Suncor Energy, expected to arrive in China by June. The Calgary office is led by Wang Jie, a seasoned professional with experience at PetroChina International Canada Trading, underscoring Rongsheng's commitment to strengthening its presence in North America. The completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX, in May 2024 has been a catalyst for increased Chinese investment in Canada's energy sector. The TMX project nearly tripled the pipeline's capacity from 300,000 to 890,000 barrels per day, enabling greater export of Alberta's crude oil to international markets. Between May and November 2024, China imported approximately 50% of the crude oil exported via the TMX pipeline, amounting to around $2 billion. Rongsheng Petrochemical emerged as a significant purchaser during this period, reflecting China's strategic interest in Canadian energy resources. Also, China's demand for natural gas is pushing it toward Canada's LNG Canada project, a major export terminal in Kitimat, British Columbia, set to begin operations in 2025. With an initial capacity of 14 million tons per year, this project marks a major shift in Canada's role as a global LNG supplier. China's growing interest in Canadian LNG is part of its plan to diversify energy sources and reduce reliance on U.S. exports. Canadian energy companies are also making deals to meet Asia's rising demand. ARC Resources recently signed a long-term agreement to supply 1.5 million tons of LNG annually to ExxonMobil's Asia-Pacific division. This strengthens Canada's position in the global LNG market, while supporting China's goal of securing stable energy sources. The political landscape has also influenced bilateral relations. Following Mark Carney's election as Canada's Prime Minister in March 2025, China's foreign ministry expressed a desire to develop relations with Canada based on mutual respect and equality. However, ongoing trade disputes and the imposition of tariffs have complicated diplomatic efforts. Both nations have called for corrective actions to create a fair environment for enterprises, but the path to resolving these issues remains uncertain. Trump's tariffs were meant to help American businesses, but they're actually making things worse. Major industries are already struggling.
How about this for a warning from one auto industry expert? The price of new cars in the U.S. will skyrocket in coming weeks, and maybe even sooner than you think.
The auto industry is in chaos. Car prices are expected to jump by $10,000 to $20,000. Fewer people will buy cars, leading to job losses and factory shutdowns. Farmers are facing disaster. China and Canada have put tariffs on American soybeans, wheat, and dairy, cutting off key markets. Many U.S. farms are already deep in debt, and now they're losing buyers. Steel and aluminum prices are rising fast. U.S. factories can't keep up with demand, so construction and manufacturing companies are forced to raise prices. This will make everything from buildings to appliances more expensive. This isn't just a small setback. The U.S. is becoming isolated while China grows stronger. Instead of boosting confidence, Trump's Liberation Day has sent markets into chaos. Stocks plunged as investors realized the damage these tariffs would cause. The U.S. dollar weakened, while China's currency gained strength. Investors see China as more stable, while the U.S. looks more uncertain. For decades, the U.S. has been the world's top economic power, using trade deals to maintain control. But under Trump's aggressive policies, that dominance is slipping. The world is shifting, and fast. As Trump pushes allies away, China is pulling them in. Canada, Mexico, and parts of Europe are turning toward Beijing. And China isn't just expanding trade, it's building influence. The message is clear. If the U.S. won't lead, China will. But how is China pulling this off? It all comes down to one powerful principle: non-interference. Unlike the U.S., which often ties trade to political or military demands, China focuses on business. No lectures, no conditions, just deals. It focused on economic cooperation, trade, and infrastructure development. This approach is winning China new allies worldwide, while frustration with U.S. policies continues to grow. And now, with Donald Trump leading America further into trade wars and diplomatic tensions, China's strategy is looking even more appealing to nations seeking stability and economic growth. For many countries, particularly those in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, China's approach is attractive. These nations often struggle with internal challenges: political instability, economic development, and social unrest. They do not want a foreign power dictating how they should govern themselves. They want investment without strings attached. China gets it, and it's paying off. A perfect example is China's engagement in Africa. Over the last 2 decades, China has spent hundreds of billions building roads, railways, and ports, without demanding political reform. Leaders from Kenya to Nigeria welcome that kind of partnership. By contrast, when the U.S. offers aid or economic partnerships, it often comes with conditions, such as human rights improvements, election reforms, or military cooperation. Therefore, many countries prefer China's approach. Latin America is another region where China's influence is growing. Nations like Brazil, Argentina, and Peru have deepened their economic ties with China, exporting raw materials like soybeans, copper, and oil in exchange for Chinese investment in infrastructure and technology. And Trump? He's doing the opposite, pulling out of trade deals, slapping tariffs on allies, and turning diplomacy into a zero-sum game. Instead of strengthening alliances, Trump's approach has alienated traditional partners. Add to that America's overuse of economic sanctions. The U.S. frequently imposes economic sanctions on countries it views as threats, such as Iran, Russia, and North Korea. While these measures are meant to pressure governments into compliance, they often hurt regular people more than governments. Many of these nations are turning to China as a safer economic lifeline. China rarely imposes sanctions unless it directly benefits, making it a far more predictable partner in today's fractured world. While America once dominated international trade and diplomacy, that balance is shifting. Countries around the world are increasingly choosing China over the U.S., not because they align politically with Beijing, but because China offers something America does not: economic growth without interference and investment without judgment. If the U.S. continues down its current path, it risks losing its position as the world's leading superpower. And if China continues to expand its influence at this pace, the world may soon look very different. On the other hand, America's agriculture is on the brink. The ongoing trade war with China is pushing American farmers toward disaster. China, which was once a top buyer of U.S. soybeans, wheat, corn, and pork, has significantly cut back on its imports. Many farmers are now facing bankruptcy, and the impact goes beyond the fields. Processing plants, transportation companies, and equipment manufacturers are also seeing major losses. The situation has become so severe that the U.S. government has been forced to pump in $10 billion in emergency aid, with $7.7 billion going to struggling soybean farmers alone. Meanwhile, China is strengthening ties with new suppliers. European pork exports to China have surged by 35%, cutting into what was once a strong American market. With China imposing tariffs on nearly all U.S. agricultural goods, American products are becoming less competitive globally. If Washington doesn't rethink its trade strategy soon, U.S. agriculture won't just decline, it could collapse. So here's the big question: is America handing the future to China, one tariff at a time? If you want to stay ahead of these global shifts, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We'll keep breaking down the stories that shape the world. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.